If you had told me that a rusted 60-year-old cast-iron tea kettle would be the explosive device that finally obliterated my relationship with my mother, I would have asked what you were drinking. I am 42 years old, and for 3 decades I played the exhausting game of survival with a woman whose ego consumed all the oxygen in any room she entered. I tried the hands-off approach. I tried setting gentle boundaries. I tried playing the dutiful daughter. But healing from codependency teaches you one brutal truth: you cannot negotiate with a covert narcissist. They will always demand your sanity as collateral. I thought I could manage the cost, walking a tightrope of polite distance. Then came the tea kettle, a relentless smear campaign, and my ultimate realization. If she was going to burn my name to the ground, I was going to hand her the matches and make sure everyone watched her light the fire. My grandmother, Eulalia, was a saint wrapped in worn floral cardigans. A former nursing home aide, she spent her life wiping the brows of strangers, and I had sworn on my life she would never waste away in a sterile facility. When her health began to falter, I didn't hesitate. I packed up my flourishing career in the city, swallowed a massive pay cut, and moved back to the suffocating confines of my hometown to be her caretaker. The catch: Eulalia only had a life estate on her small, creaky house. The deed belonged to my mother, Sibylla. Sibylla was a woman who calculated every interaction like a ledger, and the thought of living under a roof she technically owned made my stomach churn. But for 4 years it was worth it. I paid for every repair, every grocery run, every utility bill, maintaining a sanctuary for the one woman who actually loved me unconditionally. We had 4 beautiful, quiet years before Eulalia finally slipped away. The dirt wasn't even settled on my grandmother's grave when Sibylla swept into the house, trailing the cloying scent of expensive perfume and entitlement. She stood in the living room I had painted, pointing a manicured finger at the floorboards I had polished, and began dictating her rules. If I wanted to stay in her house, there would be rent, there would be inspections, there would be a price. Sibylla had remarried a wealthy surgeon, Dr. Alastair, and had legally drained every penny of my grandfather's inheritance years ago. She didn't need the money, she needed the control. Instead of bowing my head, I calmly informed her I would be leaving. The panic that flashed in her eyes was almost comical. She tried dangling the deed to the house like a carrot, then threatened to excommunicate any relative who helped me move. At 39, I simply kept my mouth shut, boxed up my entire life with my own 2 hands, and drove away in a U-Haul less than a month later. For 5 months, I tried to keep the peace. I lived by the mantra of one more time. If she could just be civil, we could maintain a distant, polite fiction. My Aunt Tamsin, a sweet woman entirely blind to her sister's true nature, started a family group chat to keep us all connected. It was supposed to be a place for funny memes and mild life updates. Sibylla, however, used it as a sniper's nest. She fired off condescending remarks about my new, smaller home in the city. I deflected, gently reminding her I would have stayed had she not tried to extort me over a grieving period. That only twisted her narrative further. She branded me an ungrateful brat who failed to appreciate her immense generosity in not charging me rent while I was providing full-time hospice care to her own mother. I let it slide, until she dropped a message in the chat accusing me of looting her house. When I pushed for details, the absurdity of her claim left me staring at my phone in disbelief. She accused me of stealing an old, soot-stained cast-iron tea kettle from the wood stove and gifting it to my father, Harlan, her ex-husband. I called her immediately, demanding to know what she was talking about. There hadn't been a tea kettle on that stove in over a decade. I didn't even know it was missing. But Sibylla, true to her nature, had completely rewritten history. That kettle had belonged to my father's family for generations. I grew up tracing the worn iron handle, knowing its history. When they divorced, Sibylla took it solely to inflict pain, a petty trophy snatched away because she knew Harlan cherished family heirlooms. Over the phone, her voice climbed to a shrill, frantic pitch, demanding I retrieve the kettle immediately or face hell. Exhausted, I hung up and dialed my father. Harlan answered on the second ring. "Is this about the tea kettle?" he asked, a rumbling chuckle vibrating through the receiver. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose, and asked him to explain. He told me that years ago, while I was living with Eulalia, he had come to visit. My grandmother adored Harlan, treating him more like a son than an ex-son-in-law. During one of his visits, Eulalia brought out the old iron kettle. She told him she knew Sibylla had stolen it out of spite and had likely forgotten she even possessed it. Eulalia insisted he take it back. Fast forward to the present. Harlan was grabbing a beer with an old buddy, laughing about how it took 20 years to get one single item back from his vicious ex-wife. That buddy's girlfriend overheard, found the story charming, and later innocently repeated it to Sibylla. Sibylla had called Harlan in a blind rage, screaming that he was a thief. Harlan, who had survived her emotional terrorism decades ago and emerged immune, simply laughed at her. He quoted the law of possession, reminded her it had his family name stamped on the bottom, and firmly told her to kick rocks. Livid and powerless against a man who no longer feared her, Sibylla needed a scapegoat. She decided it was my fault. I must have been the one to smuggle the kettle out. I was the traitor. Hearing the full story, a profound, chilling clarity washed over me. It was so unnecessary, so utterly draining, I was done. But the tea kettle was just the spark. The gasoline had been pooling for weeks. Before the kettle incident, Sibylla had attempted one last, desperate ploy to trap me. She claimed she and Alistair were selling their sprawling 3-story mansion to build a new home, and in the interim, they were moving into a tiny cabin. She offered to let me move back into Eulalia's house, but with a sadistic caveat: I would only be allowed access to one single bedroom and the shared kitchen. The rest of the house would be packed with their hoarded junk. It was an insane proposition, which I swiftly declined, happily citing my spacious 3-bedroom place in the city. But knowing Sibylla's penchant for pathological lying, I had tested her. I recorded that phone call, perfectly legal in my one-party consent state. Then I asked my friend Vance, a local real estate agent who despised my mother, to check the property listings. He scoured every database. Sibylla's mansion was not on the market. It had never been listed. It was entirely a fabrication designed to manipulate me into a corner. Armed with this knowledge, I watched Sibylla continue to slander me in Tamsin's group chat, calling me a dirty liar and a thief. I had spent 41 years biting my tongue, enduring her abuse behind closed doors to protect her public image. I never wanted to embarrass her, but the dam had finally cracked. I sent a private message to Tamsin. I am so sorry if you get upset with me, but this has been 41 years in the making, and I am done. Tamsin called me frantic, and I laid out the truth. I let her hear the gaslighting. Then in the group chat, I dropped the screenshots of the real estate databases. I exposed the lie about the mansion. Sibylla immediately floundered, typing a frantic flurry of excuses about the listing being too new to show up. I calmly replied with dates and facts, dismantling her fiction piece by piece. Tamsin watched the entire meltdown in real time, later telling me she finally understood the monster I had been dealing with. The fallout was predictably nuclear. Sibylla launched a scorched-earth smear campaign across our hometown. She twisted the narrative, painting herself as the weeping, victimized mother of a cruel, unhinged daughter. Flying monkeys, distant relatives, old neighbors, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, began flooding my phone with vitriol. I ignored them, trying to give her the chance to burn herself out. I texted her one final warning: "Stop poisoning my name or I will defend myself." She ignored it. The final straw broke when Reverend Tolliver, a man I had never met in my life, sent me a sanctimonious message on Facebook demanding I repent for my sins against my mother. I saw red. I gathered every receipt I had hoarded over the years of my hands-off approach. Every venomous voicemail, every cruel text, every secret audio recording where Sibylla mercilessly mocked the very people she was now recruiting to her side. I created a new, massive group chat. I added Sibylla. I added Alistair and his children. I added Tamsin, Harlan, the flying monkeys, her current friends, her estranged friends, and Reverend Tolliver himself. Then I unleashed hell. I hit send on a tidal wave of evidence. I let the town hear Sibylla calling her stepchildren useless parasites. I let the Reverend read her mocking his sermons. I dropped the audio of her intricate, psychotic lies about the real estate scheme. I laid bare the decades of manipulation, stripping away the flawless, philanthropic mask she wore in public to reveal the rotting core underneath. The chat descended into absolute chaos. Notifications fired off like machine gun rounds as people realized they had been played, insulted, and used. In the final moments of the digital massacre, my father, Harlan, delivered the coup de grace. He uploaded a crisp, well-lit photograph of the rusted iron tea kettle sitting proudly on his stove. Beneath it, he typed a single question: "Was this really worth it?" Before anyone could respond, Harlan and I both exited the chat. The silence that followed in my real life was deafening, and it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Feathers were ruffled permanently. Marriages were strained, friendships imploded, and Sibylla's carefully curated social empire crumbled to dust. Some people apologized to me. Some still blamed me for being a horrible daughter, insisting that family should protect family. I cut them all off. I don't care about their forgiveness and I don't miss them. My only regret is the decades I spent twisting myself into knots to be the good daughter to a woman who viewed me as nothing more than an accessory and a punching bag. All of this destruction, all of this collateral damage, could have been completely avoided if she hadn't lost her mind over a rusted piece of metal that didn't even belong to her. That kettle was just a conquest, a token of her spite. But in the end, it was the heavy iron anchor that sank her. I went full no contact that day, stepping out of her shadow and into a life where I breathe freely. Maybe some will judge me harshly for burning the bridge while she was still standing on it. But if I had to do it all over again, I'd strike the match every single time. Sometimes, the hardest lesson we have to learn is that the title of family does not grant someone a free pass to destroy your mental health. Boundaries aren't just invisible lines we draw, they are the armor we wear to protect our peace. If you are dealing with a toxic presence in your life, remember that walking away isn't a sign of weakness, it's the ultimate act of self-respect. You do not owe your sanity to anyone, no matter how much history you share. If this story resonated with you, or if you've had to make the difficult choice to protect your own peace, let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Stay strong, protect your peace, and I'll see you in the next one.